So, I just watched Land of the Lustrouos. Wow, this was good, really fucking good. So let's talk about it. So the only reason I'll be honest that I watched this series is mostly because one of my friends, two of my friends actually cosplayed some of these characters, and my friend just kept telling me something. Oh, I'm Cinnabon, I'm a gem. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? So I thought about it for like a few days, and I'm like, I kind of want to check this show out because like sometimes I'm invested in what other people are cosplaying, like usually. So I'm like, I'm gonna go check it out, and oh my gosh, I'm so glad I checked this show out because it is phenomenal. The fact that I haven't really seen that many people talk about this series is quite interesting. It's a series that came out almost 8 years ago, and it doesn't have a second season. Obviously, it doesn't have a second season like most shows. However, the manga is actually fully completed. I've seen some of the panels. It looks like it gets insane. It's like body horror, and it's really interesting. I'll be the first to admit, this started off kind of weird. This started off kind of boring, but the more I kept watching, I think it was like 2, 3 episodes in, I instantly got hooked. I liked the premise of the show, and full spoilers, by the way. I'll try not to spoil too much, maybe a little bit, but pretty much the story takes place in the far, far future. Humanity is now gone, and what remains of humanity has split off into three different beings. Those beings are like these weird octopus people, who and these weird gem people, as well as the Lunarians, which are the moon people. All of these are dividends of like humanity's essence. Like the moon people are pretty much the will of humanity. The gem people are pretty much the bone of humanity. Like our bones turn to gems, and the weird octopus people are pretty much like the flesh, like anything fleshy of ours transferred into them. So pretty much humanity split it off into three different types of things. How this works, don't ask me, anime bullshit, but yes, no, through biological means, it is technically possible to have non-carbon based life forms because I've read a few articles before where it is possible to have like crystal like beings like in sort of existence depending on the state of how things work. It is possible that non-fleshy creatures can theoretically exist. Look, also cool thing about this series is if you're a geology student or you ever study geology, they do mention a lot of these elements. Like some of the characters are pretty much based off gems, off minerals, which is pretty cool. They mention platinum, gold, phosphorite, and a bunch of other ones. So I found it like really, really interesting. Like the science guy in me, like the geology student in me, was like, hey, I know the cleavage, I know the hardness of this. And it was pretty interesting. Like it was really interesting to see. So it got me really invested solely because I took geology back in college, and I really enjoyed geology, like learning about the rocks or whatever. I tried explaining to a few people how rocks work, and they found it kind of boring. But to me, I find it pretty interesting. I've always been a historian slash a little bit of scientist in me. Like I like studying stuff like this when I'm not watching anime. I love watching historical stuff. I love watching science documentaries. So seeing a show kind of like this is pretty interesting. I've seen some comments online compared the show to Steven Universe. I've never seen that show. To be honest, I can't really comment on that. But let's just talk about the show. So pretty much the show takes place like in the distant future, and we follow our main protagonist. What remains of this new type of humanity is revealed in these gem people, like these is revealed. We follow the characters. They're pretty much like minerals come to life. They don't necessarily die because if you know how minerals work, they don't ever age. We follow our main protagonist, uh, Phospholite. Short, we'll call her him Foz. Also, cool thing about this series is they don't technically have a gender. So most of the time you'll hear me refer to them as he because they're genderless because like they're gems or like they're rocks, and rocks don't identify as people. So if you get mad about that, sucks to suck. But yeah, so pretty much we follow Foz. Foz is pretty much the weakest out of all the elements because it's so fragile. He's so fragile. Everyone constantly makes fun of him, with the only exception of is Cinnabar, which is like this red gem who is kind of rowdy, kind of tsundere like, appreciates him but doesn't really want to admit it. We follow the story as Falls like pretty much comes into contact with the Lunarians. The Lunarians keep trying to collect pretty much everyone for whatever reason, whatever remains of that essence of humanity, that warlike essence pretty much just wants to capture them to use them as weapons or to transform them. We also find out along the way that there's other beings like these weird fish octopus people. They start off as like weird monsters, and then when they go into the water they transform into their more humanoid form where they have like boobs and whatever the case is. There is a funny like interaction with them with Foss and one of the fish people or octopus people, and he's like, what is that, like those things on your chest, why do they like move so much? And it's just pretty interesting. You see the dynamic of Foss along with some of the other characters. To me, one of the more interesting things about this series is the Master. Now, we know absolutely nothing about the Master. Pretty much the Master commands all of the people, if you can even call them that. All of these gems, all of these stones, commands them, raises them for whatever reason to pretty much take care of what remains of the planet, to pretty much fight off the Lunarians, which to me is very, very interesting. Everyone at this point in the story knows that something's up with him. He has some sort of connection with the Lunarians. Now, what that connection could possibly be, no one really knows what his connection is. And whenever Foz comes into contact with one of these squid people and like ultimately loses his body parts and replaces them to get stronger, she mentions something about humans. Now, this triggers the Master. For whatever reason, he knows something about what happened to humanity. We don't know what happened to them. We just know that a long time ago, humanity died off and new species were born out of the essence of humanity. To me, that is probably one of the more intriguing things about this series. Just trying to figure out what happened to humanity. What do these gem people and the moon people pretty much have all in common? Like, yeah, they're evolved from humanity itself, but at the same time, why? And now following the character of Foss is pretty interesting because if you guys are familiar with the ship of Theseus, if you replace one part of the ship with a different piece, is it still the same ship at the end of the day? No, yes, that is pretty much the character of Foss. At the beginning of the show, we follow him as he's very, very weak, very fragile, but the more the story goes on, the more body parts he tends to lose, the more he gets to replace them with like different materials, and ultimately becomes very unrecognizable. Before, Foss used to have emotion, like all these types of feelings, but now Foss is pretty much like emotionless. Yeah, sure, sometimes he cries, but at the end of the day, he's not really Foss anymore because it's just like the ship of Theseus. The more you keep replacing your body parts, the more you become pretty much unrecognizable to the point where everyone around you starts to wonder, is this the same person? Now, I really like some of the other characters like Bolts, like Cinnabar. Cinnabar was to me one of the more interesting characters because they're pretty much there, but they're not there at the same time. They constantly keep an eye out, but every time they're around, everything around uh Cinnabar pretty much dies. Bolt is pretty much as cool uh gem with like this long black hair who can use them as weapons, and it's pretty cool. And then we also get to meet some of the other characters. I kind of forgot the name because it's a lot of minerals. However, it is pretty interesting to me in the way that the show ends off. It leaves it very open-ended as to what Foss is gonna do next. Like, okay, Foss, it's ready for like phase two or something like that. And it's really interesting. The fact that we only ever focus on one piece of land, whatever remains of Earth, it's just now into like one giant piece of land is very interesting. I really like the world building of the series. I really like the philosophical elements this series tends to tackle, what it means to be human, despite these characters not even being human, despite them just being only like these gem stone like creatures. They feel emotion, they show us more emotion. Like whenever Tissabar or that one character who derives from the snow died, I ain't gonna lie, I cried. Like I cried at their deaths. Like why? Like what the hell? And the lunar people to me are some of the more interesting things because we haven't really seen them talk or express any sort of emotion. At least not yet. But that's just my thoughts on Land of the Illustrious. To me, it is a very fascinating, deep, thought-provoking series. Like it instantly got my mind, and I just haven't stopped thinking about this series all day. Like to me, it's a really cool story. I wish we got a season two. I'm probably gonna read the manga to be honest, so you might see me post a video pretty soon about the manga because I really do want to read it because I like the premise of this. It's very, very interesting. And yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about the Land of the Illustrious. I just talked about a little bit, didn't spoil too much, but yeah, if you've seen it, let me know what you think. If you've read the manga, is it sad? Does it get sad? Because I've seen people say it's pretty much a 10 out of 10. ending. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And yeah, some stories about humanity ending always just kind of leaves me sad because I don't know, humanity should always be thriving in my personal opinion. But yeah, that's all I gotta say for now. So yeah, I'll catch you guys on my next one. Peace.